I'll show you how I add shiplap to cover the popcorn ceiling.
All right, so I've marked the location of each joist, and so my trusses run this way. So my joists are right here going all the way across. That means my shiplap is going to be running in the opposite direction. So my shiplap is going to be running perpendicular to my joist. I started down at this end. I should have started over here though, because from here to here is 24 inches on center all the way across. And instead I started down here, which made this one at 14 inches. So finding this next one was a pain. As you can see, I did like a trial and error method and put screws into here until I found the actual one, which if I would have started down here first, then I would have seen 24 inches all the way down. So you live and you learn. First thing is to find the direction of your joist. If you don't know that direction, you can kind of do trial and error like me. You can try to use a stud finder. On a popcorn ceiling, it's a little difficult. You can try to use a magnet to see if you can get it to stick to the nail. Again, going through popcorn is a little difficult. Best thing is to go into your attic. Unfortunately, this room here is very, our house is old, so it's built in the 70s. This room has a really like narrow attic, so you cannot crawl back in here. It actually stops somewhere in the kitchen. So doing that was not an option for me, so that's why I kind of just did it like the old-fashioned way over here. There might be other ways to do it, but this kind of works for me. So now that I've marked the location of the joist and I know that they run exactly this way, I'm going to transfer these measurements. So every 24 inches, I'm going to transfer those measurements over to here. And then I'm going to run a chalk line from the point over here all the way to this point, all the way through. This will help me when I lay the shiplap. I'll have chalk lines at each joist, and then I'll be able to see exactly where I want to put a brad nail in, rather than trying to find this location every time I am putting up a board. It'll already be marked. So this is a little bit tedious here at the beginning. It's a pain, but marking it will save so much time in the long run. So I'm following my joist that goes all the way along here to this side here. I went ahead and just made sure and verified that would go right into a joist, which it does. So I put a screw there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chalk line, which is this, it's full of chalk, and hook this onto my screw that's up there, and then run it all the way across to the spot that I already found on this side here, and pull the chalk line. This will create a chalk line along that entire joist for me to follow. It makes it a whole lot easier when I'm going to be installing the shiplap. But I put my screw down there. I'm just bringing my chalk line here all the way up to this point of intersection for where I know that there's a joist right there. Then I'm just going to hold my chalk line nice and tight so it goes over here, but I'm actually holding it up against the wall. You just want to make sure that it crosses that, so then you know that it's straight down here. And I'm going to try to do this with my phone too, but what I'm going to do is hold it nice and tight. Just take my finger and pull this chalk line I don't know how I'm gonna get you guys to see this. Let's see if this will work. Make it nice and straight, and you're just going to pull the chalk line and pop it, and it will make that line on there. All right, so I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, but I just kind of pop the line and then it transfers it up to your ceiling. So now this is where my joist is, along with there and that one as well. And when I'm running my shiplap boards, now I'm able to see exactly where they are. It'll make the installation of the shiplap so much easier. Now the shiplap boards, I'm going to be running perpendicular to my chalk line. So every time that my shiplap matches a chalk line, that's where I'm going to be putting in a brad nail. It'll make it super secure. Even though I am putting construction adhesive on the back of the shiplap boards, I'm still going to be inserting a brad nail at each location that there's a chalk line. So if your lines are this way, you would want to run it opposite. Just make sure that they're perpendicular to the chalk lines, not parallel to them. And I did not put that one down here at the end, nor did I put one down at the very end over here, just because I know that one's already there. But this will help me so much. That way when I'm laying the boards, I can just literally just put a brad nail each spot and not have to double check and measure or anything like this. So this process at the beginning is pretty annoying. It's one of those things that's like not fun to do, like prep work, but it'll make the installation of the shiplap go so much faster. Myself, I'm going to measure from here to the end of right here. I'm going to make that a 40 inches. I'll measure a little increments at a time. So I marked 40 inches, 60 inches, so I know that I have 100 inches, and now I can just play with whatever number comes in between of my markings. So I have 37 and a half. So now I know that I have 137 and a half over here, and that should be good. I'm just gonna take that one measurement for now. I can kind of see once I make that cut. But then I pretty much have that same distance for the majority of the room. Maybe my last couple of boards will be different, but other than that, this is a pretty easy cut. I have around the ceiling fan, the AC vent, and the smoke detector, but those I can just do with my jigsaw, so I'm not really worried about that. So, starting to cut the shiplap. Okay, so you're going to need a few things to be able to hang the shiplap to the ceiling. So your first thing that you're going to need is a brad nailer. I'm using this cordless one. I find that it's so much easier than having an air compressor. This is just my Ryobi 18 gauge brad nailer, and I'm using 2-inch brad nails. You can use 2.5 inch. They honestly didn't have those. They only had the 2-inch. So at least 2-inch though, I would say that you would need. That way the shiplap is attaching to the drywall. Also, in this case, the popcorn and any type of, drywall mud or anything that's up there, and then also attaching into your actual joist. So at least 2-inch brad nails is what you're going to need, and I am using the 18 gauge Ryobi. Again, I love it because it's cordless. It just makes it so much easier. I've just upgraded to a cordless not too long ago, and it has made a huge difference, so it's definitely worth that investment. So you're going to need your brad nailer. You're also going to need some construction adhesive. I actually like this one. It's cheaper and it's like runnier a little bit, but I find that it's easier to attach to the shiplap to. Some of the thicker construction adhesive, it's too thick, like the liquid nail, it's like too thick, and so it actually kind of makes it like leaves too many gaps. Where this is thinner, it's more like it's more liquidy, and it just, for me, it works better with attaching it to the popcorn. So you're just going to have the construction adhesive and also your brad nailer ready. And then you're also going to have those shiplap boards that you cut to size. You're going to, when you measure your wall span, you're going to want to make it probably, you know, at least 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch smaller, your shiplap boards, because there is some variation, obviously, with like the walls and everything. It's not going to be completely square. So you might have to cut a little bit off here and there. Just make sure that you don't have like a huge gap on the corners, or else you would have to install some type of like inside corner molding, or even, you know, crown molding or something like that to cover like a bigger gap. So I try to get it butt up as close as I can. And I also start with my shiplap boards with the, so you have two different sides. You have the side that has a divot in the front, and then you have what it connects to. So when I go and I lay the shiplap boards, here it is where you're going to see it upside down. I make sure to have my flat section against the wall, and then every other one that comes to it, the gap will be off of that. That way you're not having to completely reverse it. It just wouldn't make sense doing it the other way. So just make sure that you lay it, the first one, the correct direction. Keep it snug up against the wall, and every board after that, just make sure it's snug up there. That way it doesn't actually, you know, have it where it's not like level when you're laying it. So it should go pretty fast because I already have all my chalk lines marked. So that's the location where each joist is. I'm going to put a brad nail into that, and so I'm just going to put a little bit of construction adhesive, kind of like a snake, all the way across the actual board, and then should be fairly fast. Now, I do recommend, if you have an extra person that can help you, it makes doing this a lot faster. You'll have to see, you know, you'll see me going from one side to the middle to the other and all that. So if you have a second hand, it's a lot easier. One of you can be on one end, one of you can be on the other, and just kind of passing the brad nailer on to each other. That's the way my husband and I did it on our last house that we flipped, and it just made it so much faster. But when you don't have that extra set of hands, you kind of do what you can. So. Another thing, when choosing your tools, I always recommend sticking with one brand. If you're just starting off, find a brand and kind of go with it. That way you can interchange the batteries. That way when I'm using one battery like this, I can have my other battery from even another tool, just the same brand, charging. And that way if my battery runs out, I'll be able to just switch it out, and I'm not having to stop and wait for a battery to charge. When you go with different brands, the batteries are different. So like this DeWalt battery wouldn't work with this. And it just makes it where you're having to kind of invest in extra batteries and things like that. So if you're just starting off your tool collection, I would definitely recommend, you know, starting off with one brand and kind of sticking with it, whether you get, you know, you start with DeWalt or you get the Ryobi. Definitely more cost effective to go this route, and I absolutely love them. This is kind of the brand that I work with, but you know, there's different brands out there, but my advice would be just to stick with one brand. So I always start right where I know that there's already a joist. That can kind of pin that middle. And with my first piece, I like to put one on the groove part that I always do all of my boards to, but I'll be putting a few right on the actual face of it, just to hold it in there in place. Once I have a bunch going though, you'll be able to just pretty much put most of them in the groove, so you're not having to do a lot of like patching up hole work or anything. And but you will notice like some spots maybe look like it's kind of like bowing a little bit, so you might have to periodically put a couple brad nails on the actual face frame of it. But for the most part, most of your brad nails you're attaching directly onto the actual groove. And I like to go in the middle, and then I also like to go on the end, just to make sure that it's, you know, good with that. Because like right now, it's a little cut where it's not fitting completely flush, so I can pop it up there and then go and attach the nails. Measurement that you get, just so that way it'll actually fit up there. You're not trying to squeeze it in there and end up breaking the wood. But if you do have to squeeze it in there just a little bit, then I would recommend a rubber mallet. If you use a hammer, you're probably going to indent the wood. So a rubber mallet, just giving a couple taps, should fit it in there. If it cracks the wood or anything like that, I would definitely recommend making whatever cut you just did even a little bit shorter, just even 1/8 of an inch, just so it doesn't do that. Because once the boards are cracked on the edges, you can kind of tell. You don't want too much of a gap though, so it's kind of like a happy medium. On your brad nailer, you should have an adjustment as well. So if you notice that the brad nails are going straight through the board, just shooting straight through it, there's an adjustment, I know on this one here, where you can just turn this little knob here, and it will make like the head of the brad nail either go in further or out. And you want to make sure that you have it where it's not shooting straight through the wood and then not even holding the wood up for anything. So just kind of play around with it. Your first board, you can kind of get used to it, and you really won't mess it up too much. Again, you're putting one brad nail kind of on the face of it, and you're also putting the other one on the actual groove part of it into each location that you see the chalk line, which is the joist. All right, so I did notice that my first board was a little too long. I would probably have rather have cut it probably at least 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 inch shorter. I did have a little bit of like breaking down at the end, so I don't want to squeeze all the boards up like that. I'd rather it just fit in there perfectly. So once you get your first one and kind of play with it, then you can determine. I'm going to try the second board and see. It might just be sometimes the corner has a little bit more like popcorn build up or some type of build up, so it's not completely square. So I'm going to see if this one here lays up there a little bit better. If not, then I might just go and cut these down just a little bit. Yep, so these next boards will fit in there fine, so I'm not having to cut it down. It just must have been a little bit of like, not square completely at the edge, so it kind of like, I don't know, made it so the board didn't sit flat against the ceiling. So when I put the brad nail in, it split the wood a little bit. It's fine, I can always like put some wood filler or something, and I will be painting these after. So if you plan on painting the shiplap boards, anything other than white, even a little bit off-white, I would recommend painting it prior to you hanging, especially if you are painting in a dark color. Once it's up there and you have the little grooves, it is so difficult to paint unless you're using a paint sprayer, because if you use a brush, I mean, it's just a pain to get it up there in those little grooves, and especially when it's on the ceiling, your neck's gonna start hurting, everything else. So save yourself the neck ache and paint the shiplap when it's down. If you're painting it really anything other than white. Even on Project 7 where I painted it a little bit like off-white, which was like a little blue, like a very, very light blue, I painted it when it was off, and it just saved me so much. Then when you spackle, you know, your holes, you're able to just go in there with a little bit of touch-up paint and cover those up. But it'll save you so much time. I can't stress that enough, especially if you're painting it like a really dark color or even black or anything. Paint it first and then put it up there. So now I'm just going to pretty much repeat the same process that I just did on that first one for all of my boards. I'm going to put a little bit of construction adhesive, just kind of in a snake pattern all the way down, nothing crazy, and then put brad nails every location that I see the chalk line. And that's why I love where the little bit of work that it takes for the chalk beforehand, but it makes it so much easier because you're not having to question, okay, where's the location of that joist when you're up there? You can just ping, ping, ping. And if you had a second person, it would go even faster, but kind of just my advice. You want to make sure that you have a brad nail in every location on the groove part. Occasionally I'll just skip over the face, so I'm not having to patch it up anytime, since you will be able to see that. But I definitely put it everywhere on the groove end and where you see the chalk line where joist is, that'll hold it up there. And if you have to do it on the face because you do see a little bit of bowing or something, it's not, I mean, you're just going to be patching it up with some wood filler or spackle or something. So I would definitely recommend making sure that it's actually sitting down at one end. I've had it before where it looked kind of like it was at the end of the wall or ceiling, and went to go and like put it up there and it ended up being a little bit off-centered, so I had to take the board down and start over. So that's another obstacle kind of to go through if you're doing this by yourself. So kind of just eyeball, make sure that at least one end is up there flush and you push it all the way against the wall before you put that first set of brad nails in like I just did. And it'd be super nice if you have like an extra ladder or a step stool or something so you're not having to constantly move it, but hey, can't complain. All right, so I got one there. So I skipped the one here on the face of that, but I put one here and here. So just kind of randomly I do it, just if I ever see like it needs a little bit more pull. Second board's up, so now we're just kind of trucking right along and just doing the same exact process all the way down. Okay, so now you can see those 3 boards that I have up there. And other than just repeating the same process, this is pretty much the only thing you have to do, unless when you get to like a cut that you're going to have to go around, but I'm just going to use my jigsaw for that. So you can see the popcorn is getting covered up. And you can also see how like here I had a brad nail on the face, but then this one I didn't, but then I did one here again. So you can kind of figure it out as you go. Like you'll be able to see how, you know, certain spots will need a little bit more pull than others, and that will kind of hold it up there. Again, the construction adhesive will help though as well. And so once that dries, you'll be good.